2025. This is the Arlington County Board of Equalization hearing. There are 4 members present for a quorum. Mr. Hoffman is absent. There are 4 cases on the agenda, and the first case is RPC 1100603A, 2121 North Westmoreland Street. And Mr. Iannone, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about the property, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. Like was mentioned, the subject property is at 2121 North Westmoreland Street. It is a 214 unit apartment building, and the current original assessment on the property is $118,987,600, and our requested assessment is $100,300,000, and that is primarily based on the recent arm's length sale of the property in February of 2024. Directing the board to page 113 of 206 on the BOE memo is where we have a summary of some of the information we have presented to the county and now here to the board. If you're looking at the PDF, it's actually page 110. There's a slight misalignment on those page numbers. So it's the the text heavy page where I explain the following. The subject property was purchased for $100 million. We have enclosed the fully executed letter of intent dated November 15th, 2023, the fully executed purchase and sale agreement dated November 21st, 2023, and the fully executed settlement statement dated February 15th, 2024. I believe the board is familiar with these documents as we presented them last year for this property, and the board did rule in favor of the arm's length purchase price of the property. Fast forward to 2025, to our surprise, the county increased the assessment for the property by just under 19%, which is far out of line with how other multifamily properties were treated in the county. For reference, the DREA guidebook states that multifamily residential property assessments, including 1.7% new construction growth, increased 4.2% in assessed value over 2024. So we're seeing an increase on this property that's far out of line with how other properties were treated in the county. We did file an informal appeal on this property to no avail. And in conjunction with that appeal, we did provide a full copy of the appraisal that was completed in conjunction with the sale. And that is on page, the summary page is on page 120 of 206. And the county has had a chance to review that document in full. And I believe they do reference it in their test columns. So I think there's something to be said there. And it's very important to note that on the bottom of page 120 of 206, there is some commentary from the appraiser basically saying the subject property is currently under contract for $100 million. The value conclusion is $101,500,000. And the MAI appraiser concludes in the last sentence, this transaction is considered arm's length and is generally consistent with market terms. Our concluded value is within 2% of the contract price and is considered reasonable. So with all this in mind, it's a little bit surprising that we're here now, especially given the fact that, last year the county's contention was that the sale was not to be considered due to the fact that it was a couple months or a month and a half after the date of valuation, although the documents were signed within, advance of that date of valuation. And the county did say, and I can pull it up if the board would like, during the BOE hearing last year on October 23rd, 2024, at approximately 10 minutes and 45 seconds, quote, we will use, and it's a little bit, there's context, of course, but they said, we will use in connection for next year's assessment. So, we had them last year saying that it was too soon to consider the sale. And then here we are today with the county continuing to ignore the sale. This is especially surprising given, courts have ruled on this issue in the past with very strong, guidance on how a situation like this is to be treated. The 1985 Arlington County Board versus Ginsburg case has a very similar set of facts to this appeal today. Essentially, the county was, putting forward income values that were much higher than the sale price, and the courts ultimately ruled that the county has to heavily consider the sale price in the assessment. And I would say if you look at the county's test columns and their, analysis today, that they have not considered the sale whatsoever. So again, it's a little bit surprising and maybe even a little frustrating that, we have to put this in the board's hands today, but nonetheless, I would also like to point the board to page 114 of 206, where we calculate our requested assessment. We did our best to keep it simple and within the county model. We're coming in slightly above the purchase price, even though, it's pretty clear that the market for multifamily has been very stable between February 2024 and 2025, and if anything, has experienced a slight decline, although there has been some rent growth in Arlington County. So we do kind of try to account for that in our requested value. And again, cap rates have been expanding, and there's really no way to justify proposing a $15 million or 15% appreciation on this property in the matter of 10 months. But that being said, the way we get to our requested value is the ownership submitted an income and expense statement for their period of ownership through 12/31/24. We did our best to annualize that as accurately as possible. And in doing so, we update the other income, the parking and other income, to the 2024 annualized figures, which are much lower than what the county used in their original assessment. We adjust the vacancy and collection loss to 5%, which we believe is in line with the market. Although the property-specific vacancy has been pretty much unchanged around 3%, there is some additional allowance for collections typically in the market. Additionally, we adjust the expenses to 33% of effective gross income. The county was using a very low 22.5%. For settlement purposes only, really, we are using the county's cap rate because we know that, there's not very much flexibility on that. We wanted to make this as simple and straightforward of a calculation as possible. And that's how we essentially get to our requested value. We agree with the commercial value of roughly $3 million. And that brings us again to our requested value of $100,300,000. It's very important to point out, if you look at the county's test page, it's a little bit small, so it's kind of tough to read, but you will see that even in their reconstructed 2024 column, the NOI is $5.57 million. However, in their revision, they're using $6.2 million. So you can see, like, no matter how you look at it, whether you're looking at the sale or the actual income at the property that was reported by ownership, that the county is overestimating NOI. It seems very apparent that they're not acknowledging the sale pretty much at all. We did submit an MAI appraisal for this property in its entirety to the county, and thought that, that alone would be enough to get us at least close enough to not have to be here today. But unfortunately, here we are. And again, it really does not seem to follow track with the market or how other properties were treated in the county, that this property would appreciate in value by $15 million or 15% in a matter of 10 months with no change in property performance, no change in market cap rates, or if anything, downward pressure on the values. So with that, again, we appreciate the board's consideration and happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chicas for the county, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, board members. Good morning, Mr. Iannone. Again, we primarily relying upon the summary sheet as fairly well surmised by Mr. Iannone. Unfortunately, we are a little bit bereft of a full year of income for the year 2024. But when you're looking at the history of the property, you can see as much as just like almost all other apartment multifamily in the county, these have all done quite well year over year over year from 21, 22, 22 to 23. We saw upward growth of almost 5% in 2023 for GPI, just shy of 5% growth for EGI, and just over 7% growth of NOI. Then we bring in year 2024, and it seems as though all these numbers have shifted. Obviously, there is 2 months shy of what would be a full year of data. But regardless, you can see that the indication based upon the operating year does show a decrease year over year. It is important to note, of course, one of the most important, I believe, pieces of information as related by Mr. Iannone was the fee appraiser that you can see, fee appraisal, I should say, that you can see in column I. This is from the fee appraiser that was contracted by the owner of the property to defend the value of the property. And you can see that the NOI represented in column I, row 38, is actually some $700,000 higher than the NOIs projected by the county. Excuse me, $500,000 higher than the NOIs projected by the county in column G5. Again, the only difference in columns H and I is the removal of real estate taxes, which again, I think is done obviously in regards to the finding property tax value. We do load that effective tax rate back into the cap rate as seen again in column I, row, I believe that's row 39, which would obviously indicate a value much higher than the value as opined by the owner of the property. Two, I think it's important to note, as the appellant has already conceded, this property was valued vis-a-vis the sale price last year for the year 2024. The board can see that in their board minutes on page, I believe it's page 45 of 206. And again, it's strange logic if the value was 100 million last year that it would not increase anything this year. That same sale price was used 2 years in a row for value that clearly we can see other properties increasing year over year. It's well located within a half mile of East Falls Church Metro. It's within a half mile of 66 East and West. 98% occupied at the time of purchase. Again, we're not casting any doubt on the numbers that were given as far as the 2024 valuation, I&E, I should say. But at the same point, when looking at the history of the property, it's tough to see why this property would not continue its upward swing. Just like, again, we've said that this property, I would say, a bit of argument against the idea that the multifamily industry is stable in Arlington. I would think it's actually on a bit of an upswing, as it has been the last 2 years. In regards to the notion that we didn't consider the sale, we very much consider the sale, just like we did the other 17 sales or so that sold in 2024. There was 2, 4, 6, 8 sales of 130 units or more. 5 sales of 200 units or more, high rises, well located. These are all considered as far as our capitalization rates, as far as our some of the other guidelines that we use. But in regards to the actual sale price being matched dollar for dollar, I think the board understands that we are driven by the income approach to value, which looks at the direct capitalization of the income approach at a year's income. So when looking at that with the data that we don't have fully instilled for the 2024 year, in regards to the history that we do see, again, we see year over year success at this property. We do believe that between our revision and again buttressed by the fee appraiser's projection of value given the NOI that he's using, that we do believe that our value should be confirmed as a revised total of $115,184,700. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board, and I'll start. Mr. Chikas, since we're talking about historical information, on page 1 of the package, the bottom grid, if you will, talks about the 3-year history, but it only has 1 year in there. So can you give me the actual assessment for 2022 and 2023? I don't need it broke now, just the total, please.
Yes, ma'am. So it appears that for 2023, the value was 115,541,100. And I believe the prior year was 111,668,400.
So that seems to be going up and down, but okay. All right. Other questions? No? Okay, Mr. Iannone, if you take a minute to wrap up, please. Can you turn your microphone on, sir?
Sorry. So I would just like to very strongly emphasize again, that while, we hear the county emphasizing the income approach, that again, this Ginsburg case from 1985 has very clearly ruled that the sale of a subject property is the most persuasive and relevant evidence for the purpose of assessment at 100% of fair market value. So we can split hairs on the income approach all day, but we have this sale here. We have the appraisal from February 2024, and that by far is the best evidence for the value of the subject property. We are requesting a slight increase from that value to Chris's point. And again, we really appreciate the board's consideration of that appraisal and of the fact that a 15% increase is out of line with other properties in the county. And it does not align with any type of investor sentiment on, how multifamily markets have moved. And there has been no material increase or, improvement in performance here that would warrant such a large increase. It would be one thing if they leased up, half of the property or there was some major improvement, but there has not been. The property's been very stable at, 3 to 4% vacancy since the property was acquired. And again, I'd like to point out that the county is saying that.
Your minute is up. Thank you so much.
Sorry.
Mr. Chicas, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yes, ma'am. So again, relying upon the history of the property, we saw NOI growth of 8% in 2022, just shy of 7.5% in 2023. We don't know what the growth was year over year, as we don't have 2+ months of the 2024 year. But we do see growth as projected by the fee appraiser as hired by the appellant. And again, we do have an issue with the logic of using the sale price for 2 years in a row. At that point, there's an expectation that they use it in 2026 as well. We do agree that this property has increased in value. We think we see the historical summary sheet that supports that. We have the fee appraisers NOI that's $500,000 higher than the county. And we have a well-stabilized and located property, Metro adjacent and Route 66 adjacent. Thank you.
I thank you both. All right, it's just around the board. Where's everybody?
I agree with Mr. Chicas. I mean, how many years are we going to go back and look at the sales price? We've done it, this is done on a yearly basis. Benefit that they got last year, I think, a little bit premature, but I think, it's a property that is performing and it's been performing, and the income that is there based on including the appraisal that they, the NOI that they have is higher than what the county has. I'm okay with it. Revised assessment as Mr. Pickett was saying.
Yeah, I would agree. The sale was an early 2024 sale, so we've had, a year and change for this property to appreciate, and it seems like it's been going back and forth since 2023 and even before then. I tried to run several tests. The expenses looked a little low to me at the beginning, ran some tests, but to me, the numbers are there for the current assessment, and it is 98% occupied, so the property is doing really well. So I would second what you said.
And one of the biggest considerations that I think I remember last year is that we did consider, even though it was last year's zoning, but the contract was done in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's common. I mean, contract never. It's usually months before something closes.
oh yeah, but we never considered normally the sale that happened the same year.
Yeah, I
And
I think we were being good and taking it into consideration last year. But I think it's a 24 sale. And we usually look at that.
Well, we do, and that's,
I'm,
I felt that way, and I also thought initially the expenses were low. But that being said, I did a different test. I took the G1, or I'm sorry, I took that F column, the reconstructed operating
Mhm.
year, and that's 10 months. I annualized it. And annualized, it comes out at 6,689, 650, which is lower than what the test column from the county is. So therefore, I mean, I think that the lower value of the 111 is more in line with what it's performing at,
the one,
the
The one-
revised amount.
the one I love.
Well, 111 is just for the apartments, plus the retail, the 115.
Oh. Right, but it's still, I mean, even if you take the 6306 and add in the 275, it's still below
Right.
the annualized amount. Let me just double check that, 6689.
It would be
Yeah, it's 6581
81,
623.
G5.
Yeah, which is lower than what the annualized actuals are, so. Seems like a high increase, but I believe it's because we lowered it last year. So,
And we're throwing out the idea that we did close last year.
In my opinion, yeah, I mean, they already got the benefit from the sale.
we gave them the
But
benefit.
that's what the value was. I mean, it was set. A buyer bought it at that value, kind of. Now that may argue more that maybe cap rates aren't correct. The county's not, quite up to speed on that yet. But that was the value it sold at.
Well, I think last year we just took the sales price at face value. We didn't consider if that was a good deal or, what the sale was.
Well, I can't imagine we didn't argue, have discussions over how many people looked at the property and
Right, but we just took
Right, but we
the
took-
sales price. We just took it, that was the market value.
I think we were
sold that
generous
year.
in taking it last year.
Right.
His normal argument is we'll look at it next year.
Mhm.
Well, the fact we looked at it, we went ahead and looked
Right.
at it then.
Yep.
And I-
Still puts it in this year.
Right, and I would be more sympathetic if, again, it wasn't 98% occupied and the numbers didn't support,
Mhm.
because the numbers do support it.
Yeah, and someone's not willing to pay it. And that goes back to the cap rate issues, really what's in question.
That's the only thing that, I could see to move. I wouldn't
I'm not
suggest,
moving it.
I wouldn't
I'm not
suggest
moving
it,
the cap
but that's
rate.
the only variable I can see that, doesn't line up. The numbers are there for the current value. in my
The
opinion.
purchase price doesn't justify the cap rate is the bottom line. We're throwing out the purchase price totally is what we're suggesting.
Right, because we considered it much. And as I said, I think the numbers support it,
Mhm.
that they bounce. So,
Yeah, I wish it was. But
Yeah, I wish it
quite
was
all
lower.
that much.
Yeah.
I look at what the appraiser had too, and
I mean, I ran a test with the appellant's expenses. Might have just done column J1 instead of the combined two. It's a small difference, but it brought it all the way down to 104 million. So I think that's too low. That's the only thing I could see to maybe make an adjustment on, but I assume that includes real estate taxes too. So
probably.
yeah, just all things considered, the numbers are there in my opinion.
all right, then I'm going to move to confirm the county's revised number 115,184.7.
Second.
Which was second by Mr. Mendez, all in favor? Aye, opposed? It's 3-1 without Mr. Yates. The county's revised number of 115,184,700 has been confirmed. Thank you. Same folks, the next case is RPC 1404328 at 801 North Quincy. Mr. Yanoni, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property, sir.
Yes, the subject property is a office building. The starting on page 26 of 75, the BOE memo, you could see a photo of the subject property. So this property, looking at page 2 of 50 of how we get to our requested value. I'm sorry, 27 of 75. We adjust the other income on the county's original assessment to the 2024 actuals. We adjust the cap rate from 7.5 base to 9% base. That is based on the sales that we've seen in the market, as well as the CoStar estimated cap rate, which is on page 35 of 75. We believe that the 7.5 is too low for an office building at this date of valuation, and we adjust below the line for the 2024 capital spend of $397,890 to get to our requested value of $21,273,400 or $195 a foot. I think this property, looking at the income numbers, it's one where there may not be much of room for an adjustment, and we understand that. However, we felt that it was necessary to bring this to the board's attention, especially considering the recent sales on page 28 of 75. They most notably the sale of Boston Gateway for $25.7 million or $177 per square foot. The board may recall that property was sustained at $42,146,000 last year, and the property subsequently sold for just about half of that. And it was in a similar situation where, looking at the county's income numbers, there wasn't much room for an adjustment to be made. And so thus the board was forced to sustain the value. This property has a similar set of facts, and had it been, exposed to the market and sold as of 1/1/25, it surely would not have sold for $250 per square foot. So we're really asking for the board's consideration of especially that nearby sale. It's just a block down the road on Wilson Boulevard. And of course, we do include a couple other sales that are even lower on a per square foot basis, but most notably that Boston Gateway sale. And again, I think that this is kind of a demonstration of the fact that while the county is definitely very diligent in getting their net operating income figures correct, that their cap rates do not apply universally. They do not allow for property specific adjustments based on location or other factors that may play a crucial role in how these properties are considered. And I think that the Boston Gateway sale being, assessed for double the purchase price at the time is strong evidence of that. So with that being said, I know, looking at the test columns, there really isn't much to be adjusted for here. However, I think at the very least, we would appreciate the consideration of, I know it's a little bit backwards, but sometimes the county does grant, CapEx below the line in retrospect. So if we were to deduct perhaps that CapEx spend from the original assessment, I think that would at least be some, form of fair relief to ownership. Even though it's quite clear here that, when we're looking at sales, the county is consistently missing the mark. And that's mainly a function of their cap rates not being universally applicable. They work in some cases, but not in others. And I think some flexibility on that in the future would be extremely beneficial to getting to the right place on not just office properties, but other types of properties as well. And having those rigid guidelines does not reflect, how the market behaves and how sales happen. So again, referencing that sale comp at 195 a foot, or I'm sorry, at 177 a foot, we're coming in at 195 a foot. And we're just not seeing the sales to support 250. And that's really all I have, unless there's any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chikas for the county, please.
Yes, ma'am. So again, this one is more heavily reliant upon the summary sheets. Again, this one is a bit of a misnomer for the board members who've been seeing office properties all year, in the sense that this property is actually has increased value year over year over year over year. When we're looking at GPI, we can see GPI increased by 54% 2022, 48% 23, and just shy of 1% in 2024. As you can see in appellant column G, they're actually predicting a downward turn of 5%, which doesn't make much sense when you're considering the leases that are in place that will grow year over year over year. Same thing, effective gross income, 64% increase in 2022, 9% in 23, and just shy of 2% in 22. In 2024, with the owner predicting and projecting a negative 4.5% year over year. NOI the same, 126% growth in 2022, 13% growth in 23, and 4.3% growth in 24. Again, the owner and the representative are projecting a negative almost 6% decline. When you look at the original assessment made by the appraiser for the county, you can see that they projected a very modest 1.14% growth. This property, as I sort of related to a second ago, is a bit of a misnomer in the sense that it's operating in a strong performance. When we look at the rent roll as displayed, I believe it's on page 5, you can see that its largest leases in place are all contracted through 2031, 2031, 2033, 2030. Next lease to expire is for 591 square feet. This property is, again, even if you were to say it's holding strong, you would see that our original assessment is actually just a bit just a bit higher than what was achieved in 2024. We did test in column F the new information received from the rent roll as well as the 2024 INE. And again, this supported our original assessments. This being said, we do believe the county should be confirmed at a value of $27,250,800. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? Mr. Mendez.
Yes, for the county, I noticed in the test column that there's a slight increase to the cap rate. Was the original one the correct cap rate, or is that the correct one there?
Yes, sir. I believe that's the inclusion of the bid rate.
Okay, so it should be 8.745.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. Mr. Iannone, if you take a minute to wrap up then.
Thank you. Not much to add. I'd just like to reemphasize the sale down the street of Boston Gateway for $177 a foot that was assessed for double the sale price at the time of sale. And I'd appreciate the board's consideration to perhaps, the original assessment with the correct cap rate and the CapEx below the line. I think that would be a fair place to be. And thank you all for your time today.
Thank you. Excuse me. Mr. Chicas, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yes, ma'am. So again, looking at performance of the property, we do believe this property stands alone. To compare it vis-a-vis a sales comparison versus the income approach, we don't know the lease that are in place at the property that the appellant is asking you to consider. We do know the leases that are in place here. They're strong. They're for the next 7 to 8 years. This property's increased its GPI, its EJ, and its NOI 3 years in a row. We see no reason why that wouldn't continue to 2025. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, it's just among the board.
Yeah, the income is going up like the county said, and the value's coming down. So, and I do agree that, there have been some sales that maybe will be considered next year in the cap rate. I mean, we'll see probably some pretty big changes next year to the cap rate. As we all know, real estate lags sometimes, especially with interest rates, and it takes time for sales to be recorded and things like that. So I think we'll see a lot of that next year. I do think it's appropriate that we apply the correct cap rate, and it's a really small reduction. So curious to know if you guys would go that way as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'll be okay with that. I did a couple tests, but they're minor. Considering that the value, like you said, went down, I'm okay with the assessment the way it is with the correction of the cap rate.
Yeah, below the line, so very
Oh, that's minor.
insignificant.
That's minor.
So did you get a final?
Yes, my final number was 27,110,600.
That was using the original assessment.
Yeah, with the corrected cap rate of 8.745%.
Mark, can you live with that?
Yes,
Mr. Mendez?
Okay, I'm gonna move that we reduce the 2025 assessment to 27,110,600 based on using the correct cap rate of 8.745%.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mr. Panoranda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. The assessment has been reduced to 27,110,600 based on using the correct cap rate of 8.745. Thank you both. Do we have Ms. Roskin and Mr. Warren? Who's your cameras on? There we go. Okay, next case on the agenda is RPC Economic Unit 1602602A at 1800 North Lynn Street. Mr. Warren, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about the property, sir.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to start on page 43 of 268 of the county's board memo. It's our summary of facts. This is the Central Place Residences and ground floor retail. It's located at 1812 Moore Street. It's comprised of 2 tax RPCs. It's currently assessed at $233,280,100. The county is recommending a revision to $227,636,900, and the value we're requesting from the board today is a value of $211,003,600. The property is a 30-story high-rise apartment building that's made up of 377 total units and 24,000 square feet of ground floor retail. It's located at the corner of North Lynn Street and 19th Street North and is within walking distance of the Roslyn Metro Station. It was originally built in 2015. Looking at the county's income and expense summary page on page 5, there's a lot of columns there. It's broken out between, I believe there's 4 years of actual reporting, and the columns are broken out between the apartments and ground floor retail. You'll see that the county in their test column for gross potential rent, the county decreased their gross potential rent in their test column from 16.65 million to 16.3 million. The actual that was reported in 2024 was 16.2 million, so they're still $100,000 off. The effective gross income, the county's initial assessment calculated or estimated effective gross income of 15.8 million, and now in the revised test column is down 300,000 to 15.5. The actual effective gross income that was reported in 2024 was 15.1 million, or $400,000 less than what the county's at. It's also important to note, just looking at the overall assessment of the property, the 25 assessment represents a 5% increase. However, year over year from 23 to 24, the actual net operating income reported decreased by 5%. Operating expenses, and this is one of still the main points of contention with the appeal with the county's revised test column. Their original assessment had the operating expenses estimated at 23.5%, which was 3.72 million. In their test column, it went up slightly to 23.9. But if you look at the overall expense amount from the original to the test column, it actually went down from 3.72 million to 3,705,000. The actual operating expenses that were reported in 2024 was 25.6%, or $3.87 million, which was higher than the prior year reporting. So I don't know the logic behind the county's test column and reducing their original assessment from 3.72 million in operating expenses to 3,705 in their test column after reviewing the 2024 IND that was submitted. With regard to the general commercial and retail assessment, which was valued on a separate income approach based off the county's 211 guidelines, the county's current value estimate is $18,256,100. That's based off of a market rental rate of $52.11, stabilized vacancy rate of 5%, and operating expenses of 12% of effective gross income, and then capitalizing that at 7.378% overall at an overall rate. Now, looking at the county's own guidelines for retail strip or commercial properties, that 211 retail commercial guidelines would indicate the use of a higher stabilized 6% vacancy rate and 16% operating expense ratio. So they're going below those guidelines. The petitioner is utilizing the actual vacancy that was reported in 2024, which was 14% or 265,000. And the actual operating expenses that were reported, which were higher than the county's indicated guidelines of 16% at 18% or $309,000. We capped it at the same cap rate of 7.378%. Again, as of the valuation date, this property had a high vacancy. Out of the 24,474 square feet, there was a 40% vacant area, or 9,807 square feet. And so we took that excess vacancy in a below the line deduction of 857,000 square feet. So again, based on the county has acknowledged and lowered their total revenue estimates, as well as not expenses. The ratio has gone up, but not the actual overall amount. We still think there's a couple adjustments to be made based on the year-end 2024 reporting at the subject property. That's all I have. I'm happy to take any additional questions from the board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Roskin for the county, please.
Good morning, board members. Good morning, Blake. Okay, upon review of this particular property, I took a close look at the income and expense information that was reported for both the apartments and the retail. And to look at the retail side of it first, they are experiencing a 40% vacancy. And that was shown in our commercial rent roll analysis. We took a look at that. And because of the higher vacancy, at first I said, okay, what's a 1 month discount based on a 12-month lease? And that came out to $5.36. And I go, okay, well, this has a higher vacancy rate. And so instead of $5.36, we expanded that to $9.08. So we discounted the rental rate for the retail by $9.08. Okay. So when you're looking at test column F3, that's what we're going on. As for the expenses, when I reviewed the expenses and there were some things about it, like there was a trash compactor. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Retail expenses. When I reviewed the retail expenses, some of the things that they reported was like $36,000 for window washing. And I thought, okay, the ground floor retail, that expense is a little excessive for ground floor retail when they attribute that. And the same thing when I looked at the legal accounting expense. And you can find those expenses to review on page, for the retail for 2024, they're on page 231, if you want to see. But going back to looking at these expenses for retail, they also had a high expense for janitorial contract, which is highly unusual for retail. Typically, retail does not have janitorial expense because all the different tenants, they tend to take care of their own units. You don't have a cleaning lady coming in and cleaning each individual retail tenant unit. And then they were also reporting a high number for elevator repairs. Keep in mind, this is a ground floor retail space. And the same thing with the plumbing repairs. In fact, it was almost identical to the amount that was being reported for the apartment. And once again, this is only one floor, ground floor for retail. So when I looked at all those expenses that were being reported for retail that I thought were a little bit excessive and not in line with the typical market, what you would see for similar properties, it was about 162,000. Well, our difference is only about 45,000. All right. So I gave them some in a sense. Now we're going to jump over to column F1, the apartment. So taking a look at the apartment, when we're looking at columns E1, E2, or E1 for the apartment rental, okay? Keep in mind that rents change throughout the year, and they have been increasing. So some of these rents that were being reported for 2024 were also being, were the same ones for 2023. So when we're looking at that, we're projecting, because we're projecting for the year 2025. So I took a look, I did an analysis of the apartment rents for 2024. And I said, okay, well, instead of projecting ahead, instead, I matched what was being reported for 2024. Okay. Now we go down to the expenses. I did email Mr. Warren and the owner, and I asked him to give me an explanation for some of the unusual expenses, because one of the things that I noticed when I was reviewing these income and expense statements, numbers were out of alignment. For example, they were showing negative, they were reporting negative expenses, and you don't report negative expenses on an income expense statement. And so I had to get clarification on that. It turned out they were putting some of the information in the wrong place, where some of it should have been reported up in the income and not as a negative for expenses. I asked him also things for common area expense. That increased over 200% from one year to the next, from 2023. And I asked, and they said, oh, it's just typical common area maintenance. And so I looked at some other things, repairs to the parking garage, that increased 4,800%, but it's such a low amount. I said, okay, that's fine. It was, very, very small amount. Some of the other things, miscellaneous repairs, that increased 90% from year 2023 to 24. But some of the other numbers, they decreased drastically. So all I could think of is that the person who filled out the form was not putting the numbers in the correct spot. And the point I'm trying to make is I'm looking at what's going on year over year. And after reviewing the responses that I received from the email, we felt that the expenses that we used in column F1 for the apartments were very reasonable. And after reviewing this overall, it reduced the NOI for both the apartment, and it reduced the NOI for the retail, which created a reduction from a total reduction from 233,280,000 down to 227,636,900. So we feel that our reduction column is fair. I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the board? No? Okay. If you take a minute to make any final comments, Ms. Ruskin?
Okay, so for when like I said, a lot of these expenses, I was questioning, I'm going, this is only a 10-year-old project, okay? And we felt that the expenses that we applied for both the apartment and for the retail were very realistic. And it's also in line, when you compare it to the market with other similar properties, we felt this is very reasonable. And we're asking that you confirm the revised assessment, total assessment of 227,636,900, and also give consideration to how we addressed the rent for both the apartment by matching what was being reported for 2024 in the analysis or the rent roll analysis, and giving the deep deduction of $9.08 on the retail portion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Warren, if you take a minute to wrap up.
Yeah, just real quick about discrepancies between last year's reporting and this year. It could be someone different, and again, there may be dropping buckets into expenses into different buckets from year to year. But the expenses, the operating expenses are the expenses, and we have seen and we have shown that expenses are going up year over year. Contracting expenses are going up, supplies costs are going up, expense costs are increasing. 260,000 of expenses was related to a third party concierge contract that was renewed. And that the cost of that service has gone up annually. So again, I don't think there's really a discrepancy in reporting. It's expenses have gone up. They might have been dropped into different buckets, but the expenses are the expenses. And in their test column, their expenses actually went down in total amount when we're clearly showing that there was a significant increase year over year in operating expenses.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you both. Okay, it's just among the board. Whereabouts?
But I agree with Ms. Roskins that I think the test that she ran is pretty fair. I also agree with Mr. Warren that I think the expenses is something that has been going up, not just in this project or building, but everywhere. I thought maybe if there was an adjustment to be made, I just looked at the expenses just on the apartments from 23.9 to 25%. And that decreased a little bit more than what the reassessment has to 224,460,300. I didn't do any adjustment on the expenses on the retail because I think we compared F3 to G3 with the pro forma. I mean, even if taking deductions below the line, I think it's pretty much in line. I think they're both similar. That was the only thing I.
So what did you end up at the expenses on the apartments?
On the apartments, expenses are 3,876,390. This is $6,000 higher than what the penalty is.
So that takes it to what, 25?
25%.
I was actually okay with the assessment. It looks like based on the retail column, the appellant seems to be okay with the numbers the county has. So I, just like Jose, looked at the apartment expenses. I did run a test where I just plugged in the reported expenses. I think it's what, $6,000 lower than what you plugged in. And I got a little bit higher, but based on the county's explanation and the year over year increase, I think in 2023, they reported, what was it, 3.4 million. So for it to jump, 10% in 1 year, it's a bit much. So I was okay with the original assessments.
The original or the revised?
Excuse me, the revised.
Mr. Yates?
I like what Jose's come up with. I really tried to drill into these expenses pretty hard. It sounds like I'm impressed. But I do see that, and I understand the retail issue and I understand the concierge issue. Contract changed. They went up. Expenses do fluctuate. I'm going down his path, and I think he adjusted, even with what he adjusted, also affected the retail on the overall expenses by, blended the two. I'm good with it.
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
Mr. Penrose?
I'll go ahead and move that we reduce the assessment to 224,460,300. And that's based on increasing the expenses on the revised assessment only on the apartments to 25%.
I'll second that. All in favor? I oppose. Okay, so the assessment is reduced to 224,460,300 based on increasing the expenses on just the apartments to 25% in the test.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Ruskin, okay, and then we have Mr. Chikas back. Okay, the last case on the agenda is RPC 1800541 at 2300 Clarendon Boulevard. Mr. Warren, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to start on page 25 of 93 of the county's board memo. Again, this is our summary of facts. This is the Courthouse Plaza 2 office property in close proximity to you all right now. Located at 2300 Clarendon Boulevard. It's comprised of one tax RPC. It's currently assessed at $61,368,700 or $223 a square foot. County is recommending no change. The value we're asking for from the board today is a value of $50,268,600. This property is a 14-story office building located near the corner of Clarendon Boulevard and North Adams Street. It has 275,051 square feet of leasable office space and is a short walk from the courthouse metro station. Going back to, again, page, it's 4 or 5, and I can't tell, of the county's memo, you'll find the office income and expense summary. There were, or on file, there is for the last consecutive 4 years of income and expense reporting. The 2025 assessment value, although it did decrease from last year's value by 12.5% in total value from the 2024 assessment. Again, the actual NOI that was reported in calendar year 24 actually decreased by 19% year over year from 2023. This is a property that has been suffering from high vacancy. The county's current assessment was using a occupied office rental rate of $43 a square foot, which is roughly 6.4 million, and a rental rate of $38 a square foot for the vacant office space, 4.2 million in their calculation. The county was also assuming a rental rate for the retail portion of the property at $43 a square foot. And all told, when that's added up, their total gross potential rent was $11,167,000. Our net effective rental income that's applied for the office, the occupied office space, was $41.43 a square foot, basically $5.9 million. $38 a square foot, which is the same as the county's for the vacant office space, and $40 a square foot for the retail space. The subject reported $416,000 in total rental concessions in 2024, and also $788,879 in rental concessions the year prior in 2023. And the county's total gross potential rent or in their vacancy and collections, there's no inclusion or consideration for the net effective rent or inclusion of concessions at this property. The county's estimated total pass-throughs and other income of $307,000. What was reported on the I&E year-end 2024 was $238,796, and that's what we've used in our analysis to follow. With regard to the vacancy, the county is estimating the vacancy as of 1/1/2025 at 43% or 118,000 square feet. And based on their county guidelines for office are applying their highest vacancy rate applicable of 28%. The actual vacancy at the property was 118,000 or 43%. In addition, there are 3 tenants that are rolling over and vacating the property in 2025, which totals 11,216 square feet, which is an additional 4% of space. The vacancy at the subject property in 2025 is 129,000 square feet, or 47% when you consider those tenants that are rolling over into this year. So we did include those. We used the same 28% vacancy rate in our analysis, but also included a discount for lease up, assuming the property was 47% vacant for consideration below the line for excess vacancy. Effective gross income, you can see on page 27 and 93, we have a chart that shows this property has been reporting significant decreases in EGI over the last 3 consecutive years, from 2022 at 9.3 million, decreased 4.4% to 23 to 8.9, and then most recently decreased 14.8% to 7.5 million. With regard to operating expenses, the county is using $10 a square foot for operating expenses. The actual expenses that were reported in 2024 were 9.08%. We stabilized those expenses in our pro forma analysis. It took a 4-year average, which is 9.50, which is still $9.50 a square foot, which is still below the county's total operating expenses that are applied in their analysis. You can see the 4-year average on page 28 and 93. And then with regard to net operating income, again, due to the increased vacancy this property has experienced over the last 3 consecutive years, it's had a direct impact on the bottom line. Net operating income has decreased each of the last 3 years. From $6.7 million in 2022, it decreased 7% in 23 to $6.3 million. And then most recently, it decreased 19% to $5.1 million. The county's revised test value, which increased from their original assessment, is at $6.2 million. So we're roughly $1.2 million away from the net operating income this property was actually capable of generating in the most recent reporting year. The county's cap rate that they're currently applying is a 9.15%, which is fully loaded. That's a 7.992 base rate, and loaded with a 1.158% estimated tax rate. Again, that's based on their guidelines for effective age and location in the courthouse submarket. We've provided support from national publications, RERC's fourth quarter 2024, PwC's fourth quarter 2024. Arlington County also engaged Corpaz Realty Advisors for a cap rate study for office properties for the purposes of the 25 reassessment. That study indicated appropriate ranges for cap rates in Arlington County for office buildings from 7.32% to 11%, with an average rate of 8.8% for a stabilized property, office property. That's, again, significantly higher than the base cap rate that's currently being applied at the subject. There were 2 sales that Corpaz referenced in that cap rate study. Potomac Towers, which sold at a 7.32% cap rate, and Central Place Tower at 1201 Wilson, which sold at a 7.78 cap rate. Both those properties had rents and NOI at market levels and market occupancy. They were both 80% occupied or above 80% occupancy at the time of sale. Again, as we previously discussed, the subject property is 43% vacant as of the valuation date, with another 4% rolling this year. And it still, there's really little consideration given to the cap rate or the vacancy in the county's analysis, other than their discount below the line for the excess vacancy. So we feel our 8.5% base cap rate that was applied in our analysis, which again is above the county or the Corpaz cap rate study average of 8.8%, is well justified.
Okay.
That's
All right.
about all I have. Yep. And happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Chikas for the county, please.
Yes, ma'am. So again, we'll rely heavily upon the summary sheet. I believe it's on page 3. I think one of the easier ways to look at this is literally looking at the appellant's numbers in column H and our number, our original assessment, column D. And you'll see that the NOIs are only differ by approximately $130,000, just a 2% or so difference. So when we're looking at this property, it seems that we're in line with the income projections, whereas our EGI is a bit higher than the owner's EGI projection. Our OPEX projection is higher than the owner and appellant's OPEX projection. So again, it does sound like this boils down to cap rate issue, as the board has heard time and time before. But in looking at this, again, very well located property sitting almost literally above the courthouse metro, less than 3 miles from Constitution Avenue in DC. So as far as being able to attract those tenants that they're looking for, again, it's well located, well amenitized, and looking at the rent roll that's in place, which I believe is your page 5, you can see that the county actually did make adjustments and looked for those 3 leases that are expiring. But we would also point out that only one has expired as of today's date of the hearing. The others are to expire at the end of November, end of October, and the end of September. But regardless, you can see that the county did adjust for that. On the line reading without expiring leases, you can see that the per square foot rate that was applied really only changed by approximately 15 or 18 cents. Why? Because the other leases that are in place hold more square footage and are increasing year over year. The largest leases in place, almost 18,000 square feet, expires at the end of August of 2026. 20,000 square feet doesn't expire until July of 2027. Another 12,000 square feet, same time period, July of 2027. And the largest tenant at just shy of 21,200 square feet, doesn't expire until September of 2027. So there are no concessions to take into account, as these are all mature leases that are in fact increasing, mature tenants that are increasing approximately 2 or 3% year over year. When we're looking at the property itself, again, we feel this is well amenitized, well located. We have in fact adjusted for not only the vacancy that was in place as of July 1, which is some $3 million vacancy adjustment, over $3 million vacancy adjustment. There's again a below the line adjustment of some $7 million. So again, we are taking into account the status of the building as it sits as of January 1, 2025. And again, in looking at this year over year, you can see that this is a 13% drop in value, 12.6% drop in value year over year, as compared to the owner's request of a negative 28% drop year over year. That being said, we do believe that the property has been given due diligence, well analyzed in regards to its income history. And again, given that the appellant and the county are within 2% of each other's NOI, we do believe that the cap rate is the main issue. That being said, we believe the county should be confirmed at a value of $61,368,700. Thank you.
I thank you both. Questions from board members? No. Okay, Mr. Chicas, any final comments in your minute to wrap up, please?
Just to again reiterate what we see on the summary sheets, there is agreement in regards to, it would seem that there's agreement in regards to the NOI. And again, given the strength of the tenants in place, we do believe that the county should be confirmed at $61,368,700. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Warren, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's an agreement on the NOI. I mean, we are trying to stabilize this as best we can. We think we're being very aggressive with it, but we're still $200,000 below the county's test column. I will concede that, yeah, one of the main issues obviously is cap rate, and for properties with very high vacancy, such as the subject property, we're seeing the most recent sales that you're seeing this year are closer to $100 a square foot for these office properties, and not $220 a square foot, which is what this property is currently assessed at. And with that, I'll wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you both. All right, it's just among the board. Tremendous.
Yeah, I just looked at the reconstructed column. The only difference there is the inclusion of the vacant office rate or at $38 a foot. It looks like in column H, the appellant agrees with that. So I was comparing column D, column F as far as all the income and expenses and just going all the way down the line by line. Their GPI is lower. I understand, the guideline calls for a 28% vacancy, so they use that. And then the expenses are what, about 200,000 and change higher than what was reported. So with all that considered, I think I'm okay with the current 2025 assessment.
Okay, Mr. Penrose?
Well, I agree. This is one of the cases from today that I saw when I read it. I have no, no number to change. I agree with everything. I think the assessment is fair.
I agree. I looked at the vacancy. Yes, there's vacancies coming. There also could be occupancies coming. We always discuss that. Can't count those, so that 36% is done. I adjusted actually changing that 36% just to see, and you're pretty much where the county is.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, it does.
Somebody like to make a motion?
Mr. Yates.
I'll
Mr.
confirm.
Yates? Okay. Second from, can I do a second?
Second.
Mr. Mendez? All in favor?
Aye.
Position? Okay, it's unanimous. The assessment of 61,368,700 has been confirmed. Thank you both. It's the
Thank you.
agenda
Thank you all. Have a good day.
as well. Anybody have anything else? Okay, then we will stand adjourned at 10:12. Reconvene next Tuesday, August 26th, virtually for the board members at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Full agendas.
Pardon me?
Full agendas.
Yeah,